In the Astoria Piano Factory, we walk through the storage rooms where the rims are rested, and then Anthony Gilroy takes me upstairs to see how the instruments then continue to take shape. We're at the top of the building now.
Yeah, so we're on the 4th floor, and this is what we call the belly department. Belly department and bellyman is an industry term. When you hear of belly work being done to a piano, that's things with the soundboard, the plates, the stringing, the items that are inside the piano. There's over 12,000 parts in a grand piano. It's going to be strung on this floor. It's not music yet until it's fine-tuned. There's a lot of fine-tuning that has to happen, but it becomes a piano right downstairs from us.
On the way downstairs, something catches my eye. We've stopped at an old piano, or the frame of an old piano.
Yeah, so this is here to be completely rebuilt. Like everything, eventually over time, 100 years, our average age is probably 80 years, where we'll get them back for rebuilding. And you can tell by the serial number how old the piano is. This piano is serial number 91,754. I can't tell you the exact date, but I know that the 100,000th piano was given to the White House as a gift in 1903. That means this piano is likely from the late 1800s.
It's got the sign in the middle of it. All sorts of queens are mentioned. Her Majesty the Queen of England is one of the patrons, but that would be Victoria then, wouldn't it?
Yes, and it's really amazing when you see how obviously the marketing changed over the years. So here we have to Her Majesty the Queen of England, the Prince of Wales, Princess of Wales. So back then it was very important to be associated with royalty. So Steinway would make sure that different members of royalty were able to play the piano, and then they would let them keep the piano if they said something really great about it, and they would include that in their marketing, and it was important for people. They said, well, if it's good enough for the King and Queen of England, I want one in my living room.
The royal connection is a reminder of the high place Steinway has long occupied in the piano world. But there have been lots of other great grand piano makers. James Barron of the New York Times is the author of the book Piano, The Making of a Steinway Grand. How does he think Steinway achieved its predominant position?
One reason is they were there. In other words, they outlasted so many of these other manufacturers, and they went for the concert market. Other manufacturers went for the home market, which meant they were making lots of smaller pianos. Steinway kept its eye on concert grands and on the quality of the concert grands, and then tried to apply that to the rest of their line. It's hard to do if you're mass producing uprights.
So that means that concert hall after concert hall feels it has to have one.
Yes, then it became a status thing. If you're in some mid-sized city, it matters to have a Steinway. That's a mark of significance. It means you can bring in the artists who are in New York regularly, and the same goes for colleges and schools. Steinway has made a significant effort to reach out to colleges and schools the same way, especially during the recent recession, because colleges and schools, their students continue coming in, they continue practicing on pianos 24/7. They continue giving the graduate recitals every year.
This is the Juilliard School at the Lincoln Center in New York, where they have the biggest collection of Steinway pianos in the whole world. It happens to be auditions week, and 1,500 people from all over the world are queuing up to try to get in, and there aren't many places. Lots of pianos, not many places. Steinway uses its preeminence to encourage the mystique round the instruments. Conservatoires using Steinways are designated as something called Steinway schools. Scott Joplin in the Paul Hall at the Juilliard School and playing it.
Steve Carver, head piano technician.
You're in charge of how many pianos?
It varies from month to month, and about 275 Steinways, and one Yamaha and one Fazioli.
Why does Steinway have this huge predominance in the concert halls and the conservatories and the top players in the world?
It's a big question. They built a great piano. They've captured the sound that people have defined as the sound, and they've set the standard in tone quality that people have wanted for well over 100 years. Aside from tone quality issues, the company has had a long history of being extraordinary in marketing and creating an image, and that's part of their success. There's no question about it.
Is it fair, this domination of Steinway? I mean, there are these Steinway institutions. You still have the sign up, but I don't think you are one anymore because you've got two instruments that aren't.
We got to heave-ho. It was here as a non-issue. Students don't come here or come anywhere because of the server and the piano. For example, we had the Fazioli in the student recital hall. If we moved that out of the public space and put it in a rehearsal hall, we would go back on the Steinway roster. It's just because it's in a public venue. And that's
Watch
one
out,
criteria.
roadworks reported on the road ahead.
All Steinway School. It's a bit trivial, that, isn't it?
Indeed.
But nevertheless, it's part of the sort of mystique that surrounds this company.
Well, so far it has been that way. Companies are continually trying to oust Steinway from their throne, but it's not easy to do. For a tiny, tiny company, their influence worldwide for decades and decades is really unparalleled.
Steve Carver, piano expert at the Juilliard School in New York. Back at the factory, where have they got to in creating this lofty instrument? We're down one floor, and this is where the sound of the piano begins to emerge.
Exactly. So this is, we'll let him pull this piano out here. This is grand finishing, so there's literally dozens of processes happening. There's a lot of precision in there. There's 88 keys, and that means 88 hammers, but there's also over 200 strings. In a Model D, there's 243 strings. That's because most hammers are hitting 3 strings, some are hitting 2, and just the last octave or so is hitting 1 string.
A funny noise now. What's happening here?
So this is what we call the pounding room. And the pounding in the pounding room, we're gonna put this piano on it's an 88-fingered robotic machine, essentially, that's gonna play this piano incessantly for about an hour.
Sort of play, you mean?
Yes, it sounds a little bit like a horror movie, but it's very important for the piano, and there's a reason this is a soundproof room, because, you know, people will go crazy listening to this all day.
It's working it in. Just
Yes.
the very first notes are played on this machine.
Yes.
It takes expert ears to turn that sort of factory sound into a voiced instrument, and there are few ears more expert here than those of Mark Dillon. He's been with the company for 35 years, but he came to piano tuning from quite a different direction.
I was a guitar player. I learned how to tune my guitar, and then that helped me in the early stages of tuning a piano, where we pluck the strings, just very much like a guitar.
But to a very large extent, the sound of Steinway is in your hands and ears, is it?
Here in New York, yes. I listen to every piano. I make adjustments on the keys, whether it needs to be brighter. We'll harden the hammers by adding some lacquer, thinner to it, or if the note needs to be softer, we pierce the felt with a needle tool, which opens up the fibers of the felt.
Little demo of what you're doing here and now, please, with a bit of sound attached
Sure.
to it, yeah.
So as we go along, here's a note that's a little bit too bright, a little bit too raspy, the note next to it, and then it dips down a little bit. Here's another note that was a little bit bright. Some more brassiness here.
It's quite subtle stuff, though. I don't know whether listeners could hear what you were hearing as you played that.
Right, and this is something that develops over time. That's why we have stages when it comes to actually voicing our piano.
This sort of attention to detail costs money, of course. It's why the price of the smallest Steinway grand starts at $55,000 US and goes up to more than $150,000.
Speed camera reported ahead.
Special orders are even more expensive.
We've done special pianos that have sold for over $1 million. In some cases, there's a famous artist that was involved, or sometimes it's gold foil that's real gold on the piano. If people have the money to do it, we have the skills and talent here to make that piano happen.
Getting a bit away from lovely music, though, isn't it?
Yeah, that's more on the art collector side than the musical side.
But what about the performers? People like Louis Lotti on stage at the Berlin Concert House, where today he's playing one of the hall's 7 Steinways. Many of the top international pianists, past and present, are on a list of so-called Steinway artists, 1,700 performers with whom the company has what it calls a special relationship, mentioned in promotions, supported by